Thank you. Morning. So I would like to talk to you today about the power of nature and how I believe that nature can fit into our lives more fully and into all of our communities. I was really fortunate. I was raised by a family that valued time and nature. I was raised in close proximity to nature, and that's continued into my life now. It's been the reality for my children. This picture is a place that's not too far from our home here in New Hampshire that we have open access to. So it's still part of our daily routine and weekly routine to have proximity to nature. Now, professionally, I work in multiple areas. I work as an environmental and community planner. I work as an ecological designer, and I work as an educator. And so my message to you today about shifting the world from gray to green is bridging all those areas and thinking about how we can create a better reality for all of us. You see, we all know places that are devoid of nature, or practically devoid of nature. You'll see small green specks there in an urban environment. This is because we've created places that are dominated by what we call gray infrastructure. Gray infrastructures, drains and pipes and parking lots and rooftops and gutters, where we feel that we can better engineer the systems and better control the outcomes. But the truth is, what we've done is fragmented natural environments. We've degraded the environment. We've removed people from nature, which gives them joy, which has a therapeutic quality that we now understand. And so I would like to shift us away from that, and I see huge opportunities. This is not the opportunity. This is still what we're trying to move away from. But land use decisions, development decisions, are made by communities. They're made by you and me. I sit on a land use board. We talk with developers about their projects. We hold them to our rules and regulations. We show them what our vision is of our community. If our vision of our community is to fragment everything into a developable parcel and completely remove nature, in some cases we're doing a great job. I think we could do better. So I see this problem as the solution. Let's leverage that system. People are already coming to us and asking what the rules are that they should play by to develop in the community. Let's help them fulfill their vision, but in a way that's meaningful. Communities, the residents, property owners, municipal officials, they understand the context of their situation. They understand the natural resources that they have, but also the ones they've lost. They are best positioned to communicate that to others and to decide how to go forward together. And the way forward for me is something called green infrastructure. Green infrastructure can mean lots of different things to different people. But one thing it can mean is understanding where we have intact ecological systems, beautiful forests and floodplains, prairies and mountaintops, and in fairly small intact natural systems or even degraded systems that could use our help. Understanding where these are, which ones are best suited to remain that way and should be off limits to development, and how we can connect those places for people, for wildlife. And where we have a gray environment, a more urban environment, a more developed environment, how can we start to green those places? This is a rooftop in Toronto. How can we provide a way of restoring all the natural benefits that nature brings to our communities? In some cases, that'll be retrofitting gray infrastructure, like rooftops and roadways and parking lots. Finding a way to address a problem. In this case, the initial problem might be stormwater, flooding, but seeing that there are lots of other benefits that nature can also bring to the community as we address that issue. These are opportunities. So how do we do it? And who's doing it? I found that was my question. So a couple of years ago, I started to study the issue of green infrastructure, and I wanted to understand how communities in the United States were addressing this issue. What I did was I looked at 48 municipalities from across the country, big urban places like Los Angeles, and Philadelphia, and Seattle, small communities like Mound Bayou, Mississippi, Dunbarton, New Hampshire. And what I wanted to understand was, how do they define green infrastructure? What is their vision for their community? What do they understand about their natural resources they want others to understand as they come to make changes to their land use pattern? And I was especially interested in knowing, to what degree are they talking about a range of systems and services within their community? Or do they just have one issue that's important to them? In Phoenix, they're really worried about shade trees and cooling the urban environment. So I used something called ecosystem services as a way of evaluating these municipal planning efforts. And it was incredibly surprising. For one, these communities are considering much more of a range of services than I would have guessed. They're considering not only stormwater management and air quality and storing carbon, but they're also considering preserving native species, biodiversity. Some are considering food. Many, actually, out of 48, about 20%, the therapeutic benefit to humans of access to nature. What was also interesting is they're not being contained to a list of ecosystem services from the literature. They're coming up with things that are meaningful to them. The vast majority of the communities considered economics a reason for green infrastructure. In one of my interviews, a municipal staff person said to me, I knew we were doing a good job when I saw a real estate listing that said, this property is prime because it's next to a green infrastructure project. The other thing that was interesting beyond economics is communities are addressing equity issues. Many of the more urban communities are saying, we need to be thinking about bringing nature into all of our neighborhoods. 48 communities, approaching it different ways, but seeing a range of possibilities. And yet, a lot of what we see is still voluntary. It's the landowner who preserves a piece of land because they love it and they want to be good stewards of it and they love their community. It's not accessing that regulatory system. So, green infrastructure could be voluntary efforts like land conservation. But green infrastructure could also be in development, making sure there are places where we can grow our food, connect as a community and build social capital, educate each other, overcome differences. Many, many yields are possible. Green infrastructure can also be in the smallest urban and suburban places, providing a diversity of plant life for a diversity of species. Providing beauty. Aesthetics are valuable. Beauty inspires all of us. Did you know that in London, England, there's a pollinator pathway being constructed, an intensely historic and urban landscape where they're greening rooftops and park spaces, initially for the thought that it creates a pollinator trail. But the other benefits are office spaces and apartments that look out onto greenery instead of out onto a roof membrane or something less exciting. As we consider doing this in communities, as we get creative, as we work across backgrounds, we can also rethink our recreation and transportation systems. We can promote walkability and bikeability. We can address other environmental concerns. We can address other economic concerns. We can address equity in new ways. But we need to have a plan, and we need to be ready to leverage the power that we have as municipalities. Picture this. A developer comes before the community, and it's clear to them what the goals are. But they have some freedom to meet those goals in a way that works for them and allows them to have the creativity and create a unique thing that will best utilize their property in a way that's meaningful for them. But they'll know that what we're looking for are many different ecological services to be identified on the site and to be integrated. Now, if you pull into a new development, you may notice a beautiful stormwater feature on one side and a little bit of landscaping that's supposed to represent nature on the other side, but they're seldom integrated. We don't really create parking features that integrate nature. We could do that. we can have multifunctional solutions. And we can experiment. Tactical urbanism has become a really powerful tool that's used by planners, by community advocates, to come into places and to show something that's missing, whether it be seating, places to sit on the ground in a natural setting, but it allows for us to actually experiment. So we need to continue to experiment, show people what's possible before we make large capital improvements or before we ask others to do so. But what if? What if every time a local board approved a development, the community became more resilient? The natural systems became more intertwined and we restitched connections between places. What if an opportunity to develop a site was actually an opportunity to restore a greater number of natural services for the people and for the species? What if it resulted in greater value for the property owner as well? That's possible, but we need to get started. And some of the benefits of doing this will be generations of people that will grow up, whether they recognize it or not, with close proximity to nature, with an understanding of the natural world, and with all the benefits afforded to them. People who will understand the resources in their backyards and across their communities. People who will hopefully have better health, mental and physical, from their access to green spaces and other species. And this isn't a small job, I realize. In the United States alone, we have over 39,000 municipalities. I looked at 48. I could only find 108 that were actually doing anything. So I have work to do. I'm hoping many of you will join me in this work and will bring your ideas to the table so that we can push it forward. And with that, I thank you.